Welcome back to the Wolf of Property and Casualty. I'm your host, Derek Lasniak. 15 years of commercial broking experience in the middle market, upper middle market, national account space. The Wolf of Property and Casualty is a practitioner-led podcast designed for brokers, carriers, buyers, and everybody in between. No bullshit, straight talk. This series is called Commissions to Convictions, and it follows the arc of my sales career reaching the pinnacle of absolute success and the decisions I made and the choices I made that stumbled it all the way to the bottom. One of the byproducts of unemployment in the space I'm in now is the ability to reflect. I think when you're going really fast or you're in a place like jail, deep reflection is not possible. I think about 15 years of my professional career, I didn't have space, time, or energy to really reflect. And I'm sure that's a me problem. I think a lot of people do, and they figure out a way. But between my work and my constant need for more and excess, I would never have come to some of these realizations. And the topic for today is something that I have come to think about a lot and I want to share, but it's only after my 3 months of incarceration I thought about it. And it's the term condescension. And there is maybe no place on earth that you will find more condescension, and this is not going to come as a surprise, than Rock County Amusement Park, which is my name for Rock County Jail. And this is probably true of really any incarceration, but it becomes incredibly clear to you, and this is probably by design, that one of the components of interacting in a jail setting is that you are babysat or guarded by rent-a-cops. I've talked about this in other episodes. And those people, I think, inherently choose a profession like that because they have something inside of them that wants them to have, power or control. And I think in order to do that job successfully, if I'm being honest, you have to have a little bit of that. But what I realized when I was in jail is I don't think I maybe appreciated or knew what condescension felt like, because the majority of the people that you interact with that work at the jail, for no reason whatsoever, or maybe it's because of their training, there was always an edge of condescension to every interaction you had with them. It was dismissive. It was their way of exerting power over you or reminding you in every interaction with everybody in the facility that you are a notch below them. You are a step below them. And there is no place where it's more clear. You are an inmate and they are a guard. By the nature of being held against your will, there is condescension. But the way that some people speak to you and the way that they find subtle ways to remind you of that is soul crushing and breaking. There's one thing to be in a position questioning your life and all the choices and missing your family, missing your freedom, but to have every interaction be reminded of this power that they have over you and the condescension that comes with it, and that you are inevitably through and through the worst person in the world because of your very presence of being there. And I remember one situation in particular being in jail is that you don't have access to regular grooming things, for example, like, getting a haircut or shaving your face. You have to kind of check out the equipment to do that, for a safety concern. And I think I've mentioned before that I worked, 12 hours a day, partly to keep my mind occupied and partly to get home sooner to my family. And I remember one occurrence, they had trimmers to give yourself a haircut. They were available like 2 hours in the middle of the day. And I went up to one of the guards and I said, "Hey, I'm working all day long. And while I don't have much hair, I'd really like to cut my hair." And the response, right, "Could I get these trimmers outside of the normal hours?" And the response was no. And I was said, "Well, now how do you expect me to figure that out?" It doesn't matter. I said, "Is there any reason that you could not just give them to me? It'd take me about 10 minutes. And he said, "Because I don't want to." And the tone, what I came to appreciate in that interaction isn't that they said no and told me to go away. It's the tone in which that interaction, the condescending tone, that I was outrageous for even asking for a deviation from the set procedure. Like I was outrageous for even thinking that that would be considered. And so what I realized this when I got home and I started thinking about some of these principles that I want to discuss on commissions to convictions is that condescension is something that is a killer for culture and confidence. And as I tie this back to my time in sales and my time in my professional career, I witnessed condescension both that I delivered to people that worked with me and people that I exuded influence over. And I also witnessed it. I didn't know what it was. I maybe thought it was maybe just that person's an asshole or, me being an arrogant prick. But condescension, when you start to really notice it, has a very, very unique way of killing culture and confidence. It's a subtle, it's the way that messages are delivered, it's the tone. It is one thing for someone to be an asshole or a prick and be blunt about it. I think condescension is more of a silent killer because it's the way it's delivered. And when I think back to some of the more condescending people that I worked with, whether they were at carriers or even clients or within the company I worked for, I noticed that when I witnessed it or when I delivered it, I noticed that it is a tool that can absolutely be devastating to the person who receives it. I think back to a meeting that I was involved with back when I was in sales, and this is one of those big meetings with top producers and leaders and people from all over the company. And it was be delivering. There was a message being delivered by a sales leader, and this was at a time when I had gotten back from rehab, and I was mentally not necessarily in a good place, and I was constantly trying to prove to everybody that I was fine, and I was ready to get back to work, and I was fragile. But in these meetings, I had developed this reputation for always asking questions. I had, over the course of my time in meetings like this, I was always the guy that was raising my hand and questioning things or asking questions. I think this was feeding maybe my own ego, or I like to hear myself talk. And I always had something to say. And that was kind of what I became known. Now, I was influenced and I was pushed by colleagues of mine who came up to me after and they would say, like, hey, I'm glad you asked that question. I'm too scared to raise my hand, but that was on my mind as well. And so, whether I was doing it to feed myself or whether I was doing it because I actually thought I was a voice for others, who knows? Probably a mixture of both. But I remember in this meeting that there was a question raised and to the group. And this is one of those meetings where, does anybody have any questions? Comes out and no one raises their hand. It's almost like expected that no one would have a question. And I was always the guy that would be like, yeah, I got a question. And so the question arose, and this was kind of as we started to see AI take shape. The question arose is to everybody. This is leaders of the company. What are you most scared about for the insurance brokerage industry? Despite having no business raising my hand and not drawing attention to myself whatsoever, I of course had that old instinct where I was trying to show everybody I was still the guy they thought they were. I raised my hand and I said to the sales leader in front of everybody right before lunch, I said, one of the things that I'm kind of scared about with kind of the growth of artificial intelligence is that the entire insurance brokerage business could become commoditized and the large language models are going to be able to do what we do better, and it's going to start to commoditize our business, and you won't need a consultant because ChatGPT or someone else is going to be smarter and better at consulting businesses on what their insurance products should be. And I'll be honest, that is a fear, and that's probably still a fear for some people a year later as we think about some of the growth in that area. And I remember the sales leader responding to me, and I don't remember exactly what they said, but it was something along the lines of, "Whoa, that's pretty doom and gloom," in a very joking manner, like I was predicting the end of days from some chapter of Revelation. It was the way in which it was delivered. It was said in a condescending way to put down that theory, that thought. The question was asked, "What are you most scared of?" Nobody raised their hand. I raised my hand and said, "This is what I'm most scared of." And the delivery and the response to me was condescending. It was to say, that's an outrageous question, and you're a skeptic who can't control their mind. I remember in that moment, and I had moments like this in other meetings like this before. I remember in that moment feeling so small. I remember in that moment feeling so minimized, so terrible. And I think what I realize now is that for someone like me, I might raise my hand in that meeting again and again and again because the power to perform in front of others outweighs the feeling of smallness. But I think about people that I was condescending to in my career, and that might be the last time they raise their hand. That might be the last time they feel comfortable bringing up a concern because they're worried that my response back to them isn't going to necessarily just answer the question, but also make them feel small. And there's a difference between being wrong and disagreeing and exploring that and agree to disagree mentality, and a difference between that and making you feel small. Because when you make people feel small, that kind of condescension kills confidence and culture. Two things that are incredibly important in both your sales career and in your personal life.